All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our remote writing workshop. This week, we are talking about battling imposter syndrome. So many people have encountered what is called imposter syndrome in their lives, and it happens often to writers. Put simply, it's when you doubt your talents, even if you're high achieving. In fact, this syndrome happens most often in high achieving individuals. We're going to talk more about this and what you can do to combat and overcome this problem. So, Erin, tell us a little bit more about what is imposter syndrome.
Well, I'll kind of start with the history. So in 1978, there were two clinical psychologists and they coined the phrase imposter syndrome. And this applies to feelings of fraud and self-doubt that, as you mentioned, very talented high achievers often suffer from. And these people really just become convinced that they're not really skilled in whatever their area of discipline is, and they've somehow fooled or deceived people in order to find success. And there's this real fear that eventually they're going to be revealed as the fraud that they think they are. And many people will attribute their success or talent to luck instead of the skill or merit that they actually have.
Got it. Okay, so who experiences this syndrome and what are its effects?
Well, it can happen really to anyone, no matter your profession, but it definitely exists with writers. And you don't have to be a successful or professional writer in terms of being published in order to feel like an imposter. Even calling yourself a writer and trying to pursue a career in writing can result in these feelings of self-doubt. And unpublished and self-published authors definitely suffer the effects of imposter syndrome, and probably more often than authors who have a traditional publishing team behind them. Authors who haven't been published yet or independent authors sometimes don't feel validated by industry professionals, and so they might feel as if their work doesn't deserve to hold space next to these other authors that have been traditionally published. Sometimes they can feel, I guess, less than. Perhaps you've even thought these things, kind of, I'm not a real writer. But even traditionally published authors go through this too. Even when they have the endorsement of their publisher who just loves their work, they still don't believe their success is valid. And that's definitely a trait of the syndrome. So even when you have evidence that others like your work, you're still not convinced. Some people are constantly afraid, even that their publishers are going to still figure out they're an imposter and cancel their contract or something. So they're always waiting for this to happen. So as you can imagine, imposter syndrome can make you feel incompetent as a person, especially as a writer, and it can have an awful effect on your writing and your mental health. It can lead you to be really ruthless in critiquing your own work. It can lead to endless self-editing, questioning your writing decisions, even stopping writing completely. So if any of these things are happening to you, if it sounds familiar, you might have imposter syndrome.
Definitely does not only happen to writers, because I experience this at least 3 times a day. And I think it happens to everybody at some point or another, when they think that they, when they're having a lot of success or achieving a lot, where they know they've done the work, but they always have that initial self-doubt. Like they think initially that they don't either deserve it or something of the like. And it's so hard on people, because I know that, because I deal with it a lot, and it's always something that is in the back of my mind, but something I've been working past. But I think it can happen to just about anyone. I was actually speaking to a few of my girlfriends. It was so lucky that we were doing this video, because I had a few of them texting me today about how they're like going through imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're doing a video on this later today. It's such a hot topic right now. I feel like, especially since we're in the pandemic and with so much uncertainty in the world, it's kind of getting a lot harder on our mental health, and it's probably amplifying those feelings of self-doubt even more, I think.
I think so, because we're also isolated in our own little world, and you don't have kind of those people around you who can validate you as much. So if you're suffering from this, it can be even more debilitating, I think, in what we're living through now.
Definitely. So how can we overcome imposter syndrome, Erin?
Well, knowledge is power. So being able to recognize the syndrome and that that is what you're experiencing is really important. So know that you're not alone, that this is a real thing, and that many, many authors go through this. So the first step to overcoming imposter syndrome is recognizing that you're experiencing it. And putting a name to your feelings of self-doubt and inadequacy is really vital. And it's not just a simple lack of confidence. It's a very real condition that can dangerously skew your perspective of yourself and your skills as a writer. And we don't want that. It's important to realize, though, that there's a difference between simply having trouble with your writing, because this happens to every writer, and experiencing imposter syndrome, which is much more serious and detrimental to you and your writing. So definitely keep in mind you're not alone. Tons of writers have experienced this, even best-selling, famous, award-winning authors. Maya Angelou went through this. Wrote down a quote. She said, "Each time I write a book, every time I face that yellow pad, the challenge is so great. I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out." So this is someone who is absolutely phenomenal as a writer. And she had these feelings of imposter syndrome as well. The other thing you can do is talk to other writers about it. So meet with a fellow writer to discuss your feelings and just discuss it. Reach out to the very important literary community that we've talked about before that is so great to have as a writer, because your fellow writers can really boost your confidence, and really just sharing your struggles and letting it lets you know that you're not alone. So really just putting it into words, what you're going through, can make a huge difference. Another thing you can do is just think about all your hard work. So how can your success or talent be an accident when you consistently reflect on all the long hours, passion, and dedication you put in to get where you are? So once you begin thinking about your hard work, it won't even make sense that you're a fraud or undeserving. You've worked your butt off to get where you are, and you deserve it. Another thing you can do is remember all of the positive feedback you've gotten about your work. And this doesn't have to be from a publisher. It doesn't have to be from reviews. It can simply be good feedback from a writer friend or something you've gotten after a contest submission. It's important that when you do receive positive feedback, you don't just dismiss it. You want to take it in and accept a compliment. I know it's really hard for people sometimes to accept compliments, not just with their writing, but in all aspects. But you need to learn to do that. Say thank you. And when you do get criticism, use that to hone your work. Turn it into a positive, make some revisions and improvements. And you're a hardworking writer after all. You're not a fraud. And so that's what you do. You write. And that brings me to my next one. Keep writing. So as hard as it is, keep producing work. And that's the best way to stave off imposter syndrome. If a definition of a writer is someone who writes, then if you keep writing, you cannot be a fraud. You will always be constantly improving your craft as well. So that's a plus.
I love that.
So really just overall, remember that, well, I always like to remember a quote by Charles Bukowski, and it's bad writers tend to have self-confidence while the good ones tend to have self-doubt. So I always think that's nice to remember. And it's so true.
And I think it's important to remember that this is so common. I think everybody experiences some form of imposter syndrome or self-doubt, you know, in their day-to-day lives, some form, you know, maybe not as severe as others, the full-on imposter syndrome, but I think everybody experiences a little bit of self-doubt from time to time. And it's important to remember, you know, you have worked hard to get to where you are. You have, you know, you've done the work, you've put in the effort, and you know what? Tell that voice in the back of your head that it's fine. We've got this, because it's so normal. And if you're having one of those times where you're feeling that heavily, reach out to a family member, reach out to a friend who, you know, we call them, in my age group, we call them hype men or women. So get someone who hypes you up a little bit if you're having a bad day. I always like to hype up my team as much as I can, because it really, you know, gives them kind of like the pep in their step that they need if they're not having a great day.
Exactly. You should be your own cheerleader, but also find that person or the people in your lives that can do that for you as well.
Definitely be your own cheerleader first, but if on those off days you just need a little extra help, don't be afraid to reach out to a trusted friend or family member. All right. So Erin, what's our assignment for this week?
Well, the key to preventing imposter syndrome lies in building confidence. So the syndrome latches onto writers who doubt that they're good enough, and it preys upon those who seek validation in external sources such as publishing contracts, royalty checks, bestseller lists, reviews, all those things. So remember that confidence cannot be gifted by agents or editors or publishers or even readers. So you need to recognize your worth. So this week's assignment is to make a list of all the wonderful things about you as a writer, a list of affirmations, if you will. So come up with at least 5 of them. For example, I have a gift for writing dialogue, or I'm a passionate writer, I'm dedicated. So once you've compiled this list, reference it daily and repeat these mantras when you write. So it might sound silly, but these little affirmations can make a really big difference.
I completely agree. And I actually start off my day with affirmations as well. And I was actually just having a one-on-one meeting with a girl on my team, and she was struggling a little bit with self-doubt. And so I told her, affirmations are a great way and to, get you it just puts you in the right mindset and it reframes your thinking, because actually the science behind affirmations and the law of attraction or whatever is the more you think about it, the more your brain will believe it to be true. So the more that you say it and you start to believe it, the more you actually will. And so it starts just with the little things, you can write them down, you can say them to yourself. One of our authors on our list, Judy Holler, actually wrote in her book that she does affirmations, and before she's a keynote speaker, and before a big speaking event, she still gets her self-doubt and, her fear and whatever. She'll stand in front of the mirror and say, like, I've got this. And, repeat it to herself. And so there's no shame in doing that. It works.
Right. Exactly. The simple power of positive thinking. And it's so true. And just put them into actionable steps and affirmations. And it really does make a difference. You're so right.
Definitely. And I don't remember who this quote was by, but it's a quote that says, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Always believe that you can, because you can and you will.
I like that. I like that.
All right. Awesome. Well, this was a great way to end the week. So you guys, we know that self-doubt is going to happen from time to time. Just remember it's normal, and, do a few of these things every day and you will start to, regain that confidence that your self-doubt is trying to break down. So Erin, thank you so much for joining us again. Erin will be on vacation next week, ladies and gentlemen, so we will not have a remote writing workshop next week, but we will follow through it the week after. And I ran a poll about our potential topics both on Instagram and Twitter. You guys love this one. So keep letting me know what you guys want to hear, and we will make sure we discuss it in these videos. But all right, until next time, you guys.
Hi, thank you.